Hello, welcome to our session today. I'm Andy Bechtel. I teach in the journalism school, the recently renamed School of Media and Journalism. You may have heard about that. If you didn't hear about that, then our public relations is a little bit off, I guess, so to speak. But in all seriousness, I'm on Twitter, as you might imagine, because that's the topic for today. So you're welcome to follow me there. We'll talk about that, of course. I also have a website in which I talk about news and writing and editing and news judgment and journalistic things. So if you're welcome to stop by if you're curious about those types of topics as well. So I appreciate you being here today. And so I'm going to kind of go over a little bit what we're going to be doing in this session. This is a Twitter basics session. Some of you may already have a Twitter account. That's great if you do. If you don't worry. We'll help you get started. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some tips on effective tweeting, how to follow people that are interesting to you, and how to get followers. I will also, at the end of the session, after about an hour or so, help you individually. So if you have individual questions like, how do I do this, how do I do that, I'll work with you one-on-one if you like. Anytime, though, you have a question about anything that we're talking about, please chime in, make a comment. This is an informal conversation about this topic. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have that you think could help other people as well. But sort of an individual thing, like I can't figure out how to log in, I'll come help you with that at the end of the sort of big session here. So that's our plan for this afternoon, and thank you again for being here on your lunch hour. So what is Twitter? It's a free social networking site. Please come in. If you're here for Twitter, come in. If you're here for Twitter, come in. It's sometimes called a microblogging site. I've heard it referred to as that. I don't know if I totally buy that definition, but it is often used to explain what Twitter is exactly. And it has, as you can see, a lot of users worldwide. Who here has a Twitter account already? Who here uses it frequently? Who here created an account and then never use it again? It's okay. It's a very common thing. So that's okay. And that's pretty typical when I talk to groups like this, that someone said, you have a Twitter account, and then you created one, and then you kind of forgot about it. I totally get that. Some social media sites just attract you more than others, and it's totally reasonable to do that. But I do think that Twitter is a powerful tool that you can use in your work, and maybe your personal life too, but especially for your work. That's mostly what I use it for. So we'll take a look at, I'm going to go to the basic Twitter homepage. Oh, I'm pretty sure it's okay. Thank you. And the basic Twitter homepage, as you can see here, they do try to give you some highlights of what's happening on Twitter according to the Twitter people, such as apparently Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake dancing at the US Open in the crowd last night in the tennis match. Well, that's all well and good. There are other specific Twitter clients, such as TweetDeck, that are more advanced than the basic Twitter page. I'm not going to go into those today. If you want to explore those, or like I said, just one called TweetDeck. That is, a lot of people do use that who are sort of advanced users. But I'm going to, obviously, if you're going to make a new account, you'd sign up, but I'm going to log in, as most of you have accounts already. And I'll mention in a moment some effective techniques for coming up with your account name and things like that. So this is what the Twitter page looks like when I log in. And so what am I seeing here? Well, on the left-hand side, that's me. That's my profile there. So it's telling me how many tweets I've had since 2009. I've had 32,000 plus tweets. That sounds like a lot. I hope most of them were useful. Maybe some of them weren't. But anyway, I'm following 982 people, and about 4,600 people are following me on Twitter. And over here, if I wanted to tweet something, I would click on the button up here, and I could compose a new tweet. In other words, I have 140 characters to say something, and then hit tweet. And then all the people who follow me would see that if they're logged into Twitter, either on their computers or on their phones, et cetera, et cetera. I actually use Twitter on my phone probably half the time, and then on my laptop or my desktop in the office half the time, about 50-50. I have read recently that most Twitter people are using Twitter using their smartphones, so something to think about too. Same ideas will apply, same principles will apply, we'll talk about today, regardless if it's laptop or phone, but just kind of be aware of how your followers may be seeing your tweets. It's good to know that kind of thing. So I'm going to cancel that. So just in the moment I've been talking now, Twitter says I have 8 new tweets that have come in. So to see those, I would simply click on View 8 new tweets. So over here, I don't pay attention a whole lot to this, but Twitter is saying, based on the people we know you are following, you might also like these people. And on occasion, I will look at that to see if, hey, I didn't know that this person is someone I might want to follow. Of course, I did notice just now that the top who to follow is a advertisement. There are advertisements on Twitter. It's called a promoted tweet. But basically, some kind of fantasy football site is trying to get me to follow them. I'm not going to do that. But they're trying to do that. So if you see promoted next to something, that means a company has paid to have that tweet in your Twitter feed. Like Facebook, Twitter gets information about you, where you live, who you're following, and they try to tailor some of those sponsored tweets to that. In my experience, the sponsored tweets do not get in the way that much. They're not a burden. They're not pop-up ads, but they are there, so be aware of that, and they are marked as promoted that way. Okay. Let me go back to the presentation. Sorry about that. Confession, I'm a Mac person, so I'm struggling slightly with this.
You need to enable edit.
Enable editing.
Go here. Right.
Another bar.
Thank you.
And then down at the bottom, we'll show you slideshow.
Can I just do from current slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll work. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. Again, I'm a Mac person, so I'm good at that. But Windows, sometimes I get a little confused. Okay, so how to get started. Who here is tweeting personally just for fun? Who here is tweeting as part of their job? Like someone said, we need to be on Twitter, our department needs to be on Twitter. And you said, huh? That's okay. Because probably the person who said that wasn't really sure what that meant either. And that's okay. So you might be tweeting on behalf of your department or your organization. That's a common thing on campus. Are people in that situation where you're tweeting not as you, but as the Department of History or something like that, or the pharmacy school? Anybody doing that kind of thing? Okay. That's a very common thing too, where there could be several people in charge of that official account. So regardless of that, think about how you or your department, your unit on campus wants to use Twitter. Who are you trying to reach? Who might follow you? What kinds of things would you say on Twitter? What kind of information are you trying to get out there to people who follow you? So in my case, when I joined Twitter in 2009, I thought, well, first of all, I have a responsibility to do this because my field, communications, is going in this direction of social media, so I need to know what this thing is. That's one reason. But then I realized it's a really helpful tool for educators like me in journalism and writing and editing, where I can follow people who are tweeting about, writing tips, sending out links about things happening in the news I care about, and so on and so forth. And I found it to be a really powerful tool that way, much more than I thought it would be. Frankly, I was probably a little bit like maybe some of you were, thinking, why do I need to be on Twitter? I'm already on Facebook. I know what everyone had for lunch, and I don't need to know more about them. So I promise you, follow me, no lunch tweets. It is all a matter of who you follow. If they're not useful to you, unfollow someone. That's fine to do too. But think about before you create an account. If you already have, that's fine. But before you kind of get running with it, think about what's our goal here. What are we trying to achieve exactly? And think about your username. Mine's just my name, Andy Bechtel. In hindsight, it's a little bit long. It's kind of a long one, but it is intuitive. People think your name would be your Twitter name too. So if you're a department, obviously you have a different consideration there. And look around and see how maybe similar departments or units on campuses similar to ours name themselves. Faculty governance, for example. Is it faculty, FacGov, UNC?
I didn't set up the name. I think it's UNC-Chapel.
UNC-Chapel.
I've noticed around campus that a lot of the departments will use UNC and then the department for their Twitter handle. And my personal is Katie Turner UNC, so people can find me easily. I'm sure there's a lot of Katie Turners out there, but maybe not so many at UNC.
Yeah, great idea. It's a good thing.
And shameless plug. Follow @Employee Forum.
Yes, well, I'll mention that, I promise.
Forum is sponsoring this class.
Yes.
Please do follow us.
Yes, yes. And I have a list of some recommended things to follow, and you're on there, don't worry, I didn't leave you out. So think about your username, because when people reply to you on Twitter, it'll do the little @ symbol and then the username that you have. That's why a little bit shorter might be better, because that counts against 140 characters you have to say something. So if I want to respond to Katie, I'm having to say the @ thing on there. I'm already in the 130 character range, so it helps a little bit to have a shorter name if possible. But something memorable is the most important thing, and searchable, as Katie mentioned. Because people will look for you on Twitter to try to figure out, hey, is the chemistry department on here, or UNC? They'll try to use search terms like they would in Google. There is a search function in Twitter that will try to find people for you. That way, you're going to be findable. And you can change your name later if you need to. You can go into your profile and change it, so don't feel like you're locked in. It's not like a web address where you're kind of locked in and stuck with that. You can change it, but it's helpful to kind of get started on the right foot in that direction. And then you can create the account. Like I said, it's free, it doesn't cost anything, and you can fill in. You have a chance to give yourself a little bit of identification about who you are. So my account says that I'm a journalism professor at UNC. And I tweet about journalism education. I think I say with a dash of sports and pop culture, because once in a while I'll just throw in, hey, go see this movie, it's really good, or whatever the thing is on the weekend. I'll put a tweet like that out there. You can use a profile picture. The default image for your profile picture avatar will be the egg, like the tweet to Twitter bird egg. And that's okay for the first 10 minutes you're on Twitter. But after that, I would suggest you use either a picture of you, if it's an individual account, or something that represents your unit on campus or your department. So, the old well is probably a fallback. A lot of people use that, but I would think of something distinctive about your department or about you. Mine's just a picture of my face from the summer when I was hiking out in the mountains, and someone took a picture of me. I thought, that's not a bad picture. I'll use that for my profile for a while. But do use one, because it adds credibility to your account if you have a profile photo. If you're the egg avatar, the default, that is a warning sign to some people that you're not who you say you are, or that you're just one of those annoying people on Twitter who causes trouble and tries to bother people. So the egg avatar is a warning sign that someone doesn't know what they're doing on Twitter, or is somehow using it for not the right reasons. So, as you've heard, people can follow you on Twitter, and I'll give you some tips and advice on how to get more followers. And as I said just earlier when I showed the screen with Twitter on it, when you tweet a message out, assuming that someone is logging in and checking Twitter periodically, they will see a tweet that you wrote, and they can respond to you and respond back to you on Twitter in that public space. That reminds me, Twitter is a semi-public space. Anyone can look at a Twitter page. Even if you don't have a Twitter account, you can still go to twitter.com, or you can see my Twitter page and my profile and all that, even if you don't have an account. So be aware of that. Unlike Facebook, it's a little bit more of a public space. You can do a private Twitter account that's sort of locked down, only people you allow see it can see it. But the expectation of the culture of Twitter is more of a public open space, rather than Facebook is a little more private. So that's how I kind of balance that myself, is Facebook is family and friends, and all my privacy settings are locked down. If I'm not your friend on Facebook, you can't see anything I'm doing there. Not that I'm doing anything weird, but I don't know you, so I don't want to put a picture of my kid up on the public internet, but in the Facebook world, I'll put it there. Twitter is my professional persona, with a little bit of my personality coming through. So think of that as well. So just be aware. I'm sure you're all aware of some of the horror stories of someone saying something inappropriate on Twitter and then have to apologize to a politician or whatever the case is. It does happen sometimes. So be aware that people can see your Twitter page even if they don't follow you. And you can follow other people on Twitter. That's the fantastic thing about it, is I get teaching tips, I get news about my field, I get all kinds of information by my Twitter feed. So when a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago now, Jill Abramson of the New York Times, the editor there, was fired. How did I hear about that? First on Twitter. That's where I got that news. So I get all kinds of news all the time on Twitter. I first heard about those horrible shootings in Virginia, the TV crew, on Twitter. And that was one example where I did follow the story carefully on Twitter to see if it was true or not. Just kind of be aware that, as you know, people do have misinformation on the internet, including on Twitter. So kind of be careful to verify things. But follow organizations and people who interest you. So, if you're on the chemistry faculty, look for chemistry people who have your research areas in mind. If you're tweeting out from the pharmacy school Twitter account, follow other pharmacy schools that are peer institutions. What are they tweeting about? Kind of get some clues that way too. We kind of create a community that way. That's the really cool thing about Twitter. And we have a nice community here on campus of Twitter people that Katie mentioned, and we'll do so too. So I like to think of my Twitter feed as like my personalized list of headlines or my own like personal wire service, or like a little ticker going around on Times Square in a building, kind of like that you can customize. That's the cool thing about it. So if you follow some organization or person and you realize, hey, this person isn't for me, you can just say unfollow and you won't see them again. And you can customize it all, and I do it all the time. I'll add people on occasion, I'll unfollow people. And that's a great tool that way. All right, more about how it works. But first, this image here is from about a year and a half ago. Carol Folt's first tweet ever, as she said there, with a picture. So she didn't, someone taught her well, like put a picture of yourself tweeting for the first time. People like to see that on Twitter. So someone gave her some good advice on that. And I think that overall, the Chancellor's office is doing a nice job with the Twitter account. And an important distinction there, I know she's kind of high level, obviously, but what I like about this is, if you see CLF there, it really is her. And if it's just a tweet under her name, you know it's like from the South Building, from the office. That's a nice distinction to think about. If you're that high level, if you're being asked to tweet on behalf of your dean or something like that, maybe think about, okay, yes, we'll tweet as you, and people don't understand that's what's happening. That's like the institution, or South Building, basically. But CLF tells me, that's actually her, and that's kind of a nice personal touch to see once in a while as well. Yes?
Is the one-word sentence period thing a Twitter thing too?
Not necessarily. That's a pretty brief tweet. It can be, as we'll talk about today, it's a conversational tone there, casual tone, not so much of like New York Times headline style or CNN style.com headline writing. It's a little less formal than that. First tweet ever is sort of pretty basic there. But I do like the overall approach that they had with the picture and all that. So you get 140 characters. She didn't use all those characters the first time. So you get 140 characters, just as I mentioned. That would include, if you add a link, that's going to include, that's included in the character count. So if you have an announcement to your department's homepage, keep in mind, okay, maybe 120 characters or 130 because I have to leave space for my link to be there. And in case you're wondering, if you write 140 characters and you hit tweet, it won't do anything. It'll say, sorry, you're over. You're 8 words over, or 8 characters over rather. 8, they'll tell you. So you cannot go too long.
Well, you get the little countdown.
Exactly, you get a countdown. So it'll tell you as you're typing, okay, you've got 100 characters left, you've got 50 characters left, and so on. Basically, it's about 2 sentences, maybe 3 sentences, typically speaking. And there are little shortcuts you can use, abbreviations and things like that too. Can be helpful. So one exciting thing is when someone retweets something that you put on Twitter. In other words, they sort of forward it to all of their followers. And you're like, oh, great, someone liked what I said. Or at least they want to share the news I'm sharing. And that's a nice feeling. So, and that can get your message spread very quickly. Yes?
Do you have good luck with that? Do you put PLS space RT? Do you put RT? Do you kind of pander for that? Or you just hope that folks are going to be so into your material that they want to disseminate?
I think the latter works more effectively on Twitter. When you ask people to retweet directly, on occasion I see that and I will do it.
Or
If it's a job listing.
not to do it, to be demand resistant?
Some people are like that. We'll do the opposite, right? So I think, for job listings on occasion, and I do retweet job listings in my area, I'll see a please RT or please retweet, RT being a short form for retweet. And it's okay on occasion. If it seems like a little too self-interested and you put please RT, it seems a little odd, like, I don't know, please help my Kickstarter so I can go have a vacation in Aruba, please RT. I probably wouldn't retweet that. Probably wouldn't retweet it anyway. But kind of try both ways too. Try it, experiment with it. That's one nice thing is you can, we have 2 similar announcements this week for our department. Let's do a please RT once and then not once and see what kind of reaction we get. Kind of gauge it that way too. But it's nice when people organically retweet something. And it can really help get your message out really quickly. So following people on Twitter, think of what sources of information would be relevant to you. So say you love Carolina Panthers football, or you are involved in a certain research area in the School of Pharmacy, whatever it might be. Look for, the organization's Carolina Panthers official Twitter feed, sure. But I'm also going to follow maybe the Charlotte Observer's beat writer who follows, covers the Panthers, or individual players. Or in the research example, I'm going to follow the editor of the big journal in my field, who's making announcements about a call for papers and things like that, or other organizations such as those things. And you want it to be relevant to you. And then see who's following you. So if I get some new followers, I'll take a look and see, well, who are these people? And I wonder why they're following me. And on occasion, I will follow them back. Say, oh, I didn't know that this person who teaches writing at the University of Texas was on Twitter. I met that person once at a conference. Cool. And I'll look at their Twitter page and see what they're tweeting about. And if it's relevant to my area, I'll follow them. If I look at their Twitter page and they're tweeting about personal things, about, hey, here's a great place to go canoeing near Austin, Texas, and things like that, I'm like, well, that sounds nice, but that's not relevant to me. I don't live in Texas, so that's not going to help me. I'm not going to follow that person. So take a look and consider following the person back. But you're no obligation to follow them, in my opinion. You don't have to follow people who follow you. If you saw my profile, I have a lot more followers than people I follow. I'm kind of picky that way. Sorry, I just am. But think of your people that you're following as your scouts. So right now I'm talking to you, but I know that when I get back to my office, I can check Twitter and catch up on what I missed. If there's anything happening in the world or happening in my field, and I'm not going to miss anything. They're out there tweeting and saying things, and that's a nice kind of service that Twitter is providing to you if you have a well curated, well organized set of people that you follow. Okay, as I mentioned, it's okay not to follow people back. It's also okay to unfollow. I get people, I'll log in and say, oh, I lost 5 followers today. That's okay. Whatever I'm doing on Twitter is not meeting their needs. No offense taken, not personal. On occasion, I see a person say, like, oh no, someone unfollowed me, I'm devastated. I'm like, not like you broke up with them or something. It's a pretty casual relationship, don't worry, don't take it personally. So it's okay to unfollow when you realize someone is not giving information, or they tweet too much. I've had to unfollow a few people who just tweeted too much.
Or don't tweet.
Or they don't tweet at all.
They parrot everything.
Yeah, or they just retweet something I'm already seeing retweeted right into my feed anyway. And so I'll unfollow them. So once in a while I'll go through my people I follow and think, okay, is this person really doing anything or not? And once in a while I'll kind of go through and do that. And it's okay. People do that to me, I guess. And that's okay too. Whatever I'm saying on Twitter is not interesting to them, so they unfollow me, and that's okay. So how do you get more followers? Give them valuable information. So I'm the School of Pharmacy Twitter feed. Well, what do people who, alums could be following you? They might want to know about events happening on UNC and whatnot. Or faculty governance wants to let the faculty and staff know, okay, here's a meeting about this. Here's a new report about higher education funding across the country, all those kinds of things. Those kind of things are relevant to me, so I'm going to follow that feed. So offer valuable information. Include links to how I can learn more. So, Katie might tweet out, hey, there's a faculty council meeting coming up, and Chancellor Folt will be addressing the state budget, plus here's the full agenda. I can click on that, I can skim through that full agenda and see what's going to be discussed at faculty council on Friday, and so on and so forth. So that's a helpful thing to include links. You don't have to include links. If you don't have one, that's okay, but it can be helpful to get a person more information than 140 characters can provide in that way. As I said, people can reply to you on Twitter, so I can say, Katie tweets out there's a faculty council meeting on Friday, and I can tweet back and say, sounds great, we'll the chance to take questions from faculty about whatever topic I'm concerned about. Maybe she'll write me back and say, there'll be a 5-minute question period. So you can have a conversation there between two people. So look, you can click on notifications on the Twitter page, you'll see when someone's responded to you. You can also set that up as an email notification if you want. I don't do that, but some people like an email notification of when someone's interacted with them on Twitter. That might be helpful if you're not on Twitter very much, so you don't miss something. And in general, I try to reply to people that I know, or at least through Twitter I know. If it's the egg avatar, less likely. And it's worth mentioning that sometimes, especially if you're a UNC affiliated account, you might get what are called Twitter trolls. Have you ever encountered a troll online before? Yes, what was your experience?
Ellen DeGeneres and Kim Kardashian.
So what happened? What was the...
It's just announcements that their new show was coming out.
Okay, it was sort of like more of like a spam thing. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask about that.
Okay. That's a little different case. There are some spammy kind of things on Twitter too. Not too bad. The trolling issue is more they're real people, but they just want to cause difficulty. And they're sort of like the people who comment on news sites in the bottom of the page and rant and rave. There are a few people out there like that. Kate, have you experienced that?
Yeah, faculty governance gets this a lot of the time whenever we post anything about the faculty athletics committee. So if you work in an area where there might be a controversial topic like maybe climate change or something, and you tweet out about it, you might expect some people to write nasty things back to you, and you just disregard them. Just don't even reply.
You can just ignore. It's fine to ignore people if they're being weird. And how you know they're being weird is just take a quick look at their page. And I think someone said, I read recently on Twitter that someone who works for the Lineberger Cancer Center had tweeted out a link to a new UNC study about cancer, and someone had written back saying, yeah, but all the classes there are fake. So and they didn't respond to that person. That's a kind of typical thing. That's what I mean, is like this people causing trouble and being jerky. So you can ignore the jerky people, but have a conversation with people who actually want to learn more about what you're doing and are helpful. Yes?
But do those go out to everybody who's following you? Like, can they respond to everybody who's following you, or they just respond to you?
Anyone who looking at your Twitter page could see that conversation. So it'd be public. So if you wrote, I tweeted out, hey, I really love talking to everybody about Twitter Day. And you wrote me back and said, thanks for being there. And I wrote back to you and said, great, any questions? A third-party person could look at that conversation on Twitter and see that.
But it wouldn't get pushed out.
Pushed out is sort of I'm not sure how to, it would be public in the sense that you would see the @ Andy Bechtel and @ your name.
Yeah.
But you can do what's called direct messaging in Twitter, and that is sort of like email. So on occasion I'll do is, if I don't want the conversation to be public, or maybe just the two of us talking for a long time on Twitter, I don't want to clog up the feed, I'll just do a direct message to you and say, hey, I'd love to chat with you about any questions you have individually about Twitter, and that kind of thing. Then it would be private in that sense, just the two of us.
So people don't get like a notification like, oh, somebody posted to so-and-so's account that I followed.
If you can set up your account to get notifications specific to what you want to know. Like, so if you get a note, someone mentions you in a tweet, like with the @ symbol, like, I think and then @ UNC-FacGov does a great job. And so if Katie has that set up on her account to get an email notification, she would get that. But you have to set up your account that way to notify you. Yes?
Isn't it easier just to figure that both parties, the streams are available to anyone that is following either of
Yes.
these people? So if you don't want your data disseminated, don't tweet it.
Right. Yes, that's good advice. It's like anybody, basically anybody on the web could see that conversation if you and I had a Twitter chat that way. And kind of think about that. If it's a potential downside. Usually it's fine and innocent, but on occasion it's something to think about.
Yeah, just an important clarification for faculty and staff who are tweeting on behalf of your department. If you direct message someone regarding university business, that does fall under the public records law and it can be requested. So nothing really is truly private if you're doing something on behalf of your department. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
Thank you for that clarification. That's a good thing to think about. Yes?
Is it possible, just like Facebook, to delete or hide those posts, tweets?
You can delete your post if you...
Somebody's post, not your, if somebody nasty replies,
You can't control that. It'll be there. If they, for some reason, somebody's, does, @ your name and says, I think you're terrible, you really can't do anything about that. There's been some talk, and I don't want to get too, make it sound too scary, but there's been talk about Twitter being, trying to be better about policing that kind of activity, though, about harassment, because on rare occasions it has been a problem. Usually it's very hot button topics where people become abusive, but there was a way, if it does ever happen to you, you can ask Twitter, this person's being abusive, they're in violation of Twitter policies, and they can lock down their account. Yes?
Back to the topic.
Yes.
What is your experience or opinion with like pound, the auto follow? Have you ever used that feature?
Auto follow? No, I'm not using auto follow.
You can go into Twitter and search pound auto follow.
Okay.
And basically what that does is it brings up the gaggle of folks that all you have to do is follow them and we'll follow you back. So
okay.
if you're trying to cheat and get followers, that's a great way to do it.
Okay.
But then you've got, a fire hose to drink out of, and you've got
Right.
to sort out all the dipsticks, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah, I'm pretty
harder than just doing it correctly the first time.
Right. I mean, I'm happy to have followers, but also I want people to follow me who are sincerely interested in what I'm talking about, and vice versa. I mean, I'm not going to follow people just to kind of grow that. I mean, I know for some businesses they really want to increase and say, I know like WRL, for example, likes to talk about to advertisers, oh, our Twitter feed has so many followers. Yeah, so they can sell advertising that way. But for personal use and university use, I wouldn't think that would be an issue. But do let people know that you're on Twitter. Put it on your LinkedIn page, put it on your department homepage, put it on your faculty bio page or staff page, wherever it makes sense, on your business card, and so on. I can double check that. Oh no, didn't get them. I asked them to put I got new business cards for our new name. I didn't put my Twitter thing on there. I asked them to, but oh well. Okay. I tried. So, but let people know you're on there, so they don't let it be a surprise. All right. Some cool accounts to follow, and you have access to this PowerPoint, so I'm not going to click on all these links and make them pop up right now, but there is officially the UNC Twitter account, which is led by a team, but there's a guy named Philip Jones who took over that job about a year ago. He's one of our graduates in our program, so we're proud of him for this new gig. He came from broadcast journalism and he's kind of social media, and he's frankly made the UNC Twitter account a little more fun and engaging, and as in more interactive and it seemed more student-oriented too than it was before. But it was always good, but it's kind of especially good lately. Employee forums on there, so if you're a staff member here on campus, you might know, hey, there's a scavenger hunt coming up, there's University Day activities, whatever the thing is. It's a great way to get news about that. I mean, yes, there are other ways to get that news from the Gazette and whatnot, but it's in real time practically. You can say, oh, okay, there's a great event happening tomorrow, I had overlooked it, but here it is on my Twitter feed, and I can click on the link and find out more about that. Chancellor Fulton mentioned her earlier, Jim Dean is also on Twitter. He's a curious one. It's a little more personal sometimes about, hey, went for a great bike ride in Chatham County today. It's kind of interesting in some ways. He's so personal with that. Faculty governance is on that, and Katie and her folks over there do a nice job about talking about not just what faculty governance on campus is doing, but also interesting articles from the Chronicle of Higher Education that are relevant to our campus and things like that. So it's a great service that way. I mentioned my colleague Stephanie Willen Brown, who's a librarian over at Carroll Hall, where I work in the journalism school. We have a small library over there, the Park Library, that she's in charge of. I'm not saying about what the journalism library is doing so much as I like the sort of conversational but informative approach that Stephanie uses with that account, where she's kind of gives like glimpses, like behind the scenes glimpses of what her job is like, new books they've bought, new subscriptions to online databases they have. It's a really informative feed, and so she's a good person to model after, I think. If you're in a similar role in your department, take a look at what Stephanie Willen Brown does at JOMC Park Live, however you say that, short version of that. There are also some fun accounts. These are sometimes joke accounts. They're good to follow. I enjoy following. You don't have to follow any of these people if you don't want to. But I like these in particular. UNC Memes is sort of a jokey kind of account about things happening. A lot of it's about sports, basketball and so on. That's fine. But about things happening on campus. And it's like a fun, lighthearted kind of look at that. I don't know who runs that. It's an anonymous person. NC Collection is, I believe, over at Wilson Library, is a fun sort of history of North Carolina kind of Twitter feed that tweets out really fun things that appeal to me, especially because they're old newspaper ads from like 100 years ago, and it's kind of fun to see those that they've scanned in and they share on Twitter. Daggum Roy is sort of a fake Roy Williams parody account. It's It's not really Roy Williams. I don't think Roy Williams is on Twitter in real life. I don't think he wants to be. From what I've gathered about his opinion on social media, I'm not sure he's a fan of it in general. But Daggum Roy is a fake account that tweets in the manner of and dialect of Roy Williams. If you've ever listened to him talk before or after a game, it's a fun one to follow. And UNC School Props is an anonymous account. I've tried to get the person to tell me who they are just in a friendly way, but they said, sorry, we can't do that. But it's a helpful thing to know. It's a student perspective on the problems in our department. It's mostly about why isn't there a Starbucks in the building? Why is it so hard to print something here? Why is the classroom so cold today? But it does help me get a feel of the student perspective about what's happening in our building. So if there's a similar account for where you're working, it gives me a little glimpse of the student perspective I wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And it's mostly things like that. It's not mean-spirited. It's just sort of more fun, like, you know, we're all stressing out about exams, and, you know, I can't get this printer to work, it's jammed, and stuff like that. So it's a helpful thing that way. So kind of explore for your area, your interests, what helps you, but I like those for campus things. And there may be others, if you have others, I'm happy to hear some suggestions. So what should you be saying on Twitter? If your department has breaking news, announcements, that's great stuff to talk about. People like to know what's happening on campus. News about your academic unit or area. So if you're in the pharmacy school Twitter feed, there's a great news study about something at an academic journal that has some connection to campus or just in general in the field. Do you think it's groundbreaking news? Send that out too. Job listings. It can be job listings for your unit on campus. I do some job listing things because I have students and former students who follow me, so if I know of a job opening at cnn.com or whatever it is, I'll tweet that out. People seem to like that. Scenes from daily life, so if you are, again, like the pharmacy school, you know, show me a picture of something happening in your department, in your school. It could be an official kind of speech thing, or it could be just a casual moment in the lobby, professor talking to a student. People like seeing those kind of behind-the-scenes types of images. Personal observations, if it's a personal account, sure. It's okay to do that, some of that. I mean, within reason. I'm not sure I would tweet your every single lunch, but so you'll have to do that. You know, it's more of an Instagram thing to me, the food pictures, but if it's appropriate to your account, you know, be careful if it's a departmental kind of thing. You know, talk about that as a policy, like how personal are we going to get with these things. But the UNC official Twitter account has gotten a little more personal, like I said, because you also want to keep it professional. Even if it's just you, if your bio mentions, it probably would, your affiliation with the university, be aware that at some level, your expression on Twitter reflects the campus. I think about that. I mean, I know, you know, I think the university understand I'm talking about things as me, but also I'm not going to go on Twitter, I wouldn't do this anyway, but I'm not going to go on there and rant and rave about religion or politics or some other kind of thing. I mean, I suppose I could with academic freedom and whatnot, but I'm not here to rock the boat that way. I know that whatever I do on social media, because yes, it's hard to delete. Even if you delete a tweet, someone could have screen grabbed it and saved it. So I'm aware that I am in some level speaking for the journalism school when I tweet about something. So if I went on some rampage on Twitter, it might look bad. So be aware of that. Especially if you're, you know, obviously if you're an account that is representing an entire unit on campus, you want to be aware you are representing that unit on campus as its voice. So whoever is helping Chancellor Folt with that account, tweeting under her name, that's a lot of responsibility. So you're professional, yes?
Well, that was my question when you said that earlier. Because one of the biggest challenges that we face is trying to have a rich, textury, descriptive, grammatically correct, 140 character, you know, collar grab on someone, and keeping acronyms or stuff from the lexicon or pop culture, like poor punctuation. That's really challenging for us.
So what, where do you represent?
The Center for Banking and Finance.
Okay.
So it has to be professional.
Sure.
Yeah, no slang, no.
Okay.
So that's the tough part. And I thought about that earlier when you mentioned that, you know, having incorrect punctuation or something was okay, that kind of rubbed me because that rubs my director, and when it rubs my director, it has.
Sure.
Obviously, then it's a concern for me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. My background before teaching was as a copy editor at newspapers, so I'm all about that kind of stuff, don't get me wrong. But there is a little more forgiveness in the Twitter environment for minor things like that, a little bit more than you would say in a published academic journal that you assume has gone through layers of editing and rewriting. There's a little more forgiveness. In the slide I'll show in a few minutes, there's still some areas too where people will call you out if you make a grammatical error and those
Or
types of
even
things.
use contractions.
Yeah, that's a little.
This is tough.
Yeah, that's Twitter in general. The culture is a little more casual than that. But I know you're talking about a specific organization that does. Maybe their expectation is we're going to have a more formal style. But to my mind, it wouldn't bother me if you use contractions. I know that if I'm writing for an academic journal, I probably wouldn't. But if I'm writing for Twitter, then I would be okay with can't or isn't or those standard contractions. It's that though you're projecting, as you mentioned, the tone of your organization somewhat through how you use Twitter, like anything else, just like you would for any other publication you produce. Some more tips for you: have a personal touch. Be conversational. Don't be sort of like one thing the news media might feel kind of got wrong with Twitter at first was that they kind of just blasted out headlines. Like newspaper headline sounding things, and people didn't like that. It didn't work very well. You got to make a connection with someone. Because when I say, how will this information affect you, to the people who follow you? And so, with the banking thing, okay, there's a new report out from the federal government or an academic journal. Okay, how does it affect that group? Use the direct address. I would suggest that. Here's what you need to know about this kind of thing. Can be helpful. Use a key detail. Find one thing about this news and information that will hook me in. So if Katie just says, there's a faculty council meeting on Friday. Well, there's often faculty council meetings on Friday, no offense. What's different about this one? Give me a detail about, okay, they're going to be talking about athletics. Oh, I'm curious about that because that's an issue on campus.
You guessed it. How'd you guess it?
I don't know. I keep hearing things in the DTH about all that, committees and stuff like that. So, there's a question? Yes.
So, on your example there, it says Leslie Jean Thornton at LJ Thornton.
Yes, that's a tweet.
Okay, so
I screen grabbed it there.
that first part before the at symbol, is that just, how does that get there? Is that the person that's logged into the account?
Yes, that's the person who's logged into the account. She's a professor at Arizona State University. She's one of our PhDs from UNC. And so when I see my Twitter feed, as I showed you earlier, I have the name and the image of the person or organization, and then her Twitter address or her username. And then what she said here, I can see here, if people have retweeted this, it would tell me how many times it's been retweeted by other people. We'll talk about favoriting. It's sort of like liking something, and sort of like Facebook in that way. If I click on View Summary, sometimes there's a little bit more information about where the link will take me to and things like that. But I can see she posted this 34 seconds ago, and I screen grabbed this. It's at the top of my feed. And I was like, that's interesting because some academic research says that tweets that have images with them get more clicks. So I thought that was interesting. So I screen grabbed that and did that. So if I were looking at my regular Twitter page, I'd see her and then all the other people I follow who are tweeting at that moment or in the past hour, whatever the case is. And by the way, that's a good question. Leading to another point. Don't feel bad about not seeing everything on your Twitter page all the time. People say, I can't follow many people because I'll miss some of the tweets. That's okay. It'd be impossible to kind of corral all of them. So you can create a little subset list of important people if you want. I think of it this way though. When I go to Twitter, I'm like dipping my toe in the stream and the water goes by and it feels nice. Then I'm going somewhere else for a while. And the water will pass by. If it's important enough information, like the Jill Abramson firing was on my Twitter feed for days, it'll come back to me. I'll find it again. You're not going to miss anything if you're not on Twitter 24 hours a day. It'll be okay. Just check in once in a while. Don't worry about it. Use a number. Why do you see all those tweets and headlines these days? The top 9 things to know about the Republican debate coming up or something like that. Why do people use numbers? They attract our attention. There's some research that shows that people feel that's a finite amount of information they're going to get when it doesn't feel overwhelming. So the numbers are effective. So you can say the internet's crazy for these cat pictures and 47 craziest cats on the internet. There's a reason those numbers are in there, those tweets. Use abbreviations. I was doing some Twitter training with WTVD, the TV station, and how their reporters and producers use Twitter. And I noticed they were kept spelling out North Carolina and South Carolina and things like that in the tweets. I'm like, it's okay to abbreviate those things, you know. And they're like, well, we thought it'd be more formal sounding. Well, you only have 140 characters, and I can NC makes sense to me. So abbreviate that and save yourself space for more important information beyond the geography. And then you can add a photo. It's as simple as attaching a photo to an email, basically. Use a chart. As Leslie Jean says here, that does get more people to click and see what you're talking about if you have an image there. And it'll give it like Twitter will give like a preview of the image in the Twitter feed, so you can kind of see a little piece of it. All right. I mentioned earlier about the issue of a tweet versus a headline, sort of in my world, and the difference. So the LA Times wrote an article about the sales tax going up in LA County to 9.75%. Ouch, that's pretty high. Welcome to California, I guess. And so it was the rate increase is about to go into effect. The website headline and the newspaper headline said something like, sales tax to go into effect tomorrow, or something like that. They wrote the tweet as only 3 more hours shopping hours until the sales tax goes up. And it had, you know, a big response. People like, oh, thanks for letting us know. I was going to go buy a new phone or a new computer today. And I want to do that now versus tomorrow when the sales tax goes up. So thanks for letting us know. So making that connection to people about how this news can affect them is really helpful. So if you have an event or news that can help people, make sure you focus on that angle of it. A couple other tweets I liked. I'll show you some examples. You know, I liked the tone that Daily Tar Heel put here, and I see the faculty governance retweeted this, so I guess they liked it too. You know, confused about how the search goes for a new UNC system president. We made a timeline for you, so that's helpful. I know what the information will be about. I even know kind of how they're presenting it as a timeline versus just a regular article about that. So that's interesting to me. And here's an example of sort of a behind-the-scenes departmental level thing where, you know, we had a guest speaker from a public relations firm in New York come and talk to our students for a couple days. And one of our faculty took a picture of her talk and her interacting with the students. And this got lots of, you know, response to the journalism school, retweeted it and whatnot. So those behind-the-scenes things, if you're working for a departmental level Twitter account, that can be really helpful and interesting to see kind of. Yes?
I noticed at the very end of that tweet, it said at UNC-J school.
Yes.
Why?
I probably would put it in there. I probably would put I would actually put, to brainstorm, I would probably put the word at there. There's debate about this. This is kind of getting the Twitter weeds here a little bit, but to my mind, this is just a proper name, the Twitter address, like your at symbol and then your name. I would put I would have said class 2 brainstorm at and then at UNC-J school. You know what I mean? Like the word at there. That's what she means. So you'll delete the word at if it has the at symbol in there. There's debate about that.
And I guess I'm also asking, why mention yourself again? It's like your tweet account's taken there.
It could be that the faculty member wanted to make sure that our official Twitter person saw this and didn't overlook it.
Okay.
And they would get a notification saying, hey, you've been mentioned on Twitter.
I see.
And so then they kind of grabs their attention. So if you want to, you know, on occasion I'll do that. I'll say, I keep picking on Katie back there, and I'll say, hey, and then at faculty governance, what's the agenda for this week's faculty council meeting? So then Katie in her office would see, oh, someone's asked us a question. If I didn't have the at symbol, like the account name there with the at symbol, then you might overlook it maybe. It might still pop up on your radar screens, but it it's like sort of like mentioning you, like as they call that.
Well, like with Instagram, you have all these hashtags. And
Yes.
Sometimes it's ludicrous where you have 50 of them.
Yes.
And it shows a little picture and I'm just curious to like what to bump up or what not or those type of things, like the mention, like you're like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that helps. We'll talk about hashtags. I do see it as an Instagram thing where I have people I follow on Instagram who like seem to add on every single hashtag they can think of, and there's infinite space there to do that. On Twitter, I would keep it maybe 1 or 2 hashtags at most. We'll talk about hashtags today too. So a couple more sample tweets. I think it's fine to ask a question, as the top one does, as long as the answer is in the link that you provide. So you hear people ask and criticize the media, my field, for what's called clickbait, which is sort of teasing you in. I'm okay with enticing people to click as long as they get something nutritious out of that. don't bait them and then switch to something else, or make sure you answer the question. And there is some place for wordplay and other techniques, depending on your organization, depending on the tone of the situation. But ours, the sort of spelling out respect. This is a copy editor of the Washington Post who tweeted that out, a friend of mine, about the first spelling bee winner passing away. And she did have some hashtags on there as well. But I like that. We talked about this a little bit already, but the spelling and grammar issue, people ask about that. Do I have to spell things correctly? Yeah, I try to do that. But there's a little more forgiving attitude on Twitter versus the academic journal or the official university homepage or whatever the case is. People understand you're writing off the cuff. But do be careful because, for the example here, Time Magazine, the official Time Magazine Twitter account, tweeted out this thing about college to name its school of communication after Ron Burgundy, the Anchorman character, just for one day. They didn't do it permanently, but thank goodness. Just for a day. And they have the wrong its there. It should be just ITS, not IT apostrophe S, the its problem that vexes lots of my students. So people did, as you can see here, respond and said, hey, Time, as they're saying there, it's, so if you're tweeting as a big, the school of government is your Twitter account, be aware if you misspell Pat McCrory's last name, people will notice that. The little typos, commas here is a little bit more forgiving. The environment's somewhat more forgiving, depending on, you might have a different experience. But in general, people understand a little bit that typos
It would
can
be
happen.
hilarious to spell Pat McCrory's name wrong.
Yes, that would be bad. That would be a bad thing. Maintain good taste. Sorry about this slide kind of cutting off there. My Mac did that, I guess, versus Windows. Maintain good taste. This is one from my field where an anchor for the TV station in Philadelphia was trying to play off of the fact that Breaking Bad, the series, was having its finale. And she tried to connect that to some actual live news in real life in Philadelphia and used this tweet, and she was reprimanded for this tweet and got a negative reaction from people on Twitter saying, it's insensitive and so on. So, maintain good taste, and like I said, keep that professional level up. You can track your traffic. There are different ways to do this. This is a screen grab from the Twitter app on my phone. So it tells me how many people saw my tweet. I don't know exactly how they know that, but how many people saw my tweet. In this case, it's a job listing for managing editor at WRL.com. Engagements means people clicked on that or did something with it, and so on. So if that's a concern for you, there are more advanced tools than that. We won't get into those today. But there are advanced analytical tools that can tell you, how Twitter is working out for you. But the phone has a nice thing where I can kind of see right away, oh, well, not only was it retweeted that many times, but people, clicked on it and did this and that and the other thing. We talked about hashtags a little bit, what came up. This is one from the, last month. The hashtag FDOC, which I actually saw in print in the Daily Tar Heel, in the print edition of Daily Tar Heel, it's the first day of class. So be aware of the power of hashtags that way, especially how they're kind of creeping into everyday language. But hashtag is what I used to call the pound sign. The pound sign on your old phones, those things. Or the number sign. And then some kind of word, which has to be together as a word. You can't do a two-word hashtag. You only pick up the first word. But it's a nice way to kind of tag the content. So for example, first day of class. So these three people are all talking about the first day of class at UNC, including the university account. So if I clicked on that in Twitter, it would take me to all the people who had that in there, with the hashtag in there. So on occasion, I'll use that for, to kind of keep track of an event. So for example, we're going to have First Amendment Day on campus. I'll make a pitch for that. September 29th, I believe it is. And it's a celebration of all the First Amendment with the law school and journalism school and so on. The hashtag will be UNC free. So, as in freedom. So, we used to have First Amendment Day as the hashtag, but that was long. And people did either first, spelling it out, or, one ST. And so that we said, let's make a better hashtag. UNC free is shorter, easy to remember, and everyone will type it in the same way. And that, if I click on that, then I can see all the tweets about that event. So it's a helpful thing that way. So if you have an event or a topic, consider using a hashtag, but maybe one or maybe two. You don't have to use the hashtags at all if you don't want to. They're not required. They can be helpful. Some frequent Twitter abbreviations you might see, and you've already heard some of these today. RT is a retweet, in other words, you've been retweeted. Sometimes people will retweet, they retweet something, and then they'll do, their next tweet will be, regarding that LRT, that means last retweet. Like, I retweeted that because of this. It's a new one I'm seeing more often. Hat tip is, I get if someone says something funny, or I saw a link back to somebody else in my email, and I tweet it out, and I'll say, here's something new and interesting, HT to Katie for mentioning it to me. Like, kind of like citing their sources, I guess you could say. Overheard is exactly what it sounds like. So if I'm walking across campus and I hear someone say something funny, it would be OH. And if more people wanted to come in, Katie, you want to open the door there? Look at folks want to come in. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, and then this is in case you missed it. So on occasion, people will tweet the same thing twice. Maybe one time at noon, and the next day at 5 p.m. If they think it's important, they'll put this "in case you missed it" abbreviation in front of that, in case you missed it the first time. And that's fine. If you think it's important information, it can't hurt to tweet it twice, like about a meeting coming up or a job listing or something like that. Follow Friday is kind of fading away, but that was a big tradition for a while for Twitter, was to do recommend people follow on Twitter with the hashtag FF or Follow Friday, like as in on Friday, sort of like Throwback Thursday is now. You know what Throwback Thursday? TBT. It's kind of like the same thing, but a little bit different. Did we get that straightened out? Katie, some folks looking for the right word?
Checking now.
Are we in the wrong? Were you in their way?
I thought we had the room till 1:30. I just keep going.
Okay. So real quick, in case we do get the boot, direct messages is a way to send an email basically within Twitter to someone, if you want to do that. Favorites is a little star. It's kind of like liking something on Facebook, where you click on the star and it says you favorited that. It means you like it. Or it's also a way to kind of bookmark something, because you can go back later and see, what did I favorite today? You can see what you did. Twitter trends, on the left-hand side of the Twitter page, when you're on Twitter, you'll see what people are talking about. You can customize that by city somewhat. There's one for Raleigh, one for Greensboro, not one for Durham or Chapel Hill. But you can see what people are talking about in unique places. The lists is sort of an advanced thing, but if you want to set up your Twitter feed by topic of the kinds of people you follow, you can create individual little segmented lists of people. So you can slice up all the people you, so to speak. It sounds kind of strange. You can divide the people you follow into categories if you wish. I do that with, I teach a class online, and everyone in the class is on Twitter, so I have a special list of just those students so I can see what they're saying on Twitter. And then muting, say you want to follow somebody, but sometimes they talk too much, there's like a mute button on Twitter. They added that last year, which is a nice thing. A real quick example of that is, I follow a guy who's really good during the week on Twitter. He's also a diehard Carolina Panthers fan, and that, I admire the passion. But on Sunday afternoons, he live tweets the game, like every single play, and that's more than I need about that. So on Sunday afternoons, I mute him as soon as the tweets start on the Panthers game. And then Monday morning, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I need to unmute him and see what he's saying today. Yes?
I think you mentioned this before, and I kind of missed it. So what are you using to follow all your tweets?
I'm just using the basic, two things, the basic Twitter homepage.
So you have it up on your PC?
Yes, on my laptop and my desktop in my office. And then I didn't bring my phone with me, but I have an iPhone. There's an app, you can use app on that. So about half the time I'm taking the bus or whatever, I'll look at my Twitter feed there.
Okay, so
Yeah, both places.
You're like using it for notifications?
No, I don't. I pretty much, as far as like email notifications, I pretty much turned all of those off as my own personal preference, because I found that they were just clogging my inbox.
Right,
So-
so you're really just using it as a boost to following?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly the case. Other questions?